All right, so we mentioned what is coming up on stream, so let's go ahead and meet our players on the stage. The first player, hoping to make another repeat performance, once again coming on the global stage, please welcome JasonZhou! His opponents, hailing from America, looking to make another performance following up 2014. Please welcome to the stage, Ant!
Let's dance! JasonZhou versus Ant!
JasonZhou is someone I've actually played on ladder a ton.
For Ant, I used to play in early serve a lot, but at that time I don't really know this player.
I didn't know that he was from China, and I think he streams on their streaming service, and he's kind of a popular dude. I haven't talked to him in person yet, but I mean, he seems like a pretty cool guy.
I watched a bit of his video. He did pretty good in the North America Championship, so we'll see.
JasonZhou versus Ant! Let's rock!
Hello everybody and welcome back. I'm TJ, joined by Nathan, the Admiral. That's Admiral Zamora. And we're about to bring you JasonZhou versus Ant. And when I heard earlier yesterday that I'd be casting this match, Nathan, I was incredibly pumped.
Why is that?
Well, one thing is, you can probably tell this story a little bit better, is our history with seeing Ant on the competitive stage.
Yeah, I saw Ant in a very different way than a lot of folks have. It was 2014. It was the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York. And that was the top 16 for Americas at the time. This was the road to BlizzCon. You top 4 this event, you're going to that World Championship. Ant, I had a great hand against him. 2 Molten Giants, Hellfire, Defender of Argus. He's playing aggro Zoo, about to play 2 8/8 taunts, lock up the board. Well, Ant killed me on turn 3, so I didn't have a chance to do that.
And now he's here, and a fun fact about that as well, that was my very first Blizzard cast, was Admirable versus Ant on that stream at Hammerstein Ballroom. And now we're here. Me and you are casting together, Ant's on the big stage. It's come full circle.
He's made it.
He's made it. And you guys got a glimpse of the lineups there. And the big thing about this lineup is you saw Ant tower over JasonZhou on the stage. His deck list pretty much tower over JasonZhou's when we see them head to head. He's got the full aggressive lineup, and JasonZhou, he went with a risk. He went with an anti-control lineup, but doesn't do well against aggressive decks.
It certainly does not, and that's a thing he's going to have to face regardless of who his next opponent is in the group. This entire group that he's in is all aggressive lineups. When we spoke to Jason before this event, he said, I wanted to take a risk. These guys are all great players. I think it's split on who's going to be control and who's going to be aggro. I went with anti-control, ran into anti-aggro.
Yeah, a funny story. In the 2016 World Championship just last year, JasonZhou said he didn't even look at the prize pool. He didn't want it to distract him, and he made it all the way to top 4. He was really confident in his play and his decks. Coming into this tournament, after seeing his groups, JasonZhou said he only looked at one prize, and that's last place.
Yep.
That's how grim he feels his chances are in this group, with everybody having aggressive decks and with him having an anti-control lineup. But right off the bat, and patches in the opening hand. We saw that a lot with X-Hope, and it didn't bode well for him. You hate to see that.
No siree, Bob. You don't like to see that at all if you're the Patches player. But talking about JasonZhou looking at that last place prize, that's what he's got to overcome in this group. Sure, his back's against the wall, and luck shut the door, but now he's got to open up the window. I mean, the most important matches for JasonZhou, if he wins this championship, not likely to be his 3rd or his 4th match. It's very likely to be these first 2 or 3 that he's got to play here.
Yeah, he's got to get over the hump. Maybe if he wins out the group, if he upsets some of these players that are in his group, he'll be able to run into some of those control lineups, run into some of those other mid-range lineups where his are, teched a little bit more greedy. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but he's already on the back foot even before we queue up this first game. But it is going to be the Shaman from Ant versus the Paladin from JasonZhou.
Yeah, and this is a fairly straightforward build that Ant has. He's got 2 copies of Bloodlust in his Token Evolved Shaman. He wants to get a bunch of minions on board, have some synergy working with them, and if he's able to keep a big board, have Bloodlust be a threat for basically the rest of the game. For JasonZhou's position, this is more an aggressive Murloc Paladin, I'd say, than the rest of his lineup, but he is missing key cards early on. He's got 2 copies of Grimscale Chum, Murloc Tidecaller, and Vilefin Inquisitor. They're all missing, and he's also got a copy of Crazed Alchemist in there to maybe play some tempo game against Manatide Totem, against Flametongue Totem, that sort of thing. But Ant's opening hand has been less than stellar, so I think JasonZhou's actually got a decent shot in this one.
He's got the Consecration in hand, so he's just going to go ahead and equip the Rowling Blade to make sure that he'll be able to clean up the board next turn, regardless of how it shakes out. Now, looking at the lineups again, Jason's Paladin deck is probably his best chance. Murloc Paladin is an interesting deck because it is pretty aggressive. It can get off to some blistering starts, but its strength lies in sort of the value that it can obtain throughout that mid game. You know, even if it misses that early start, Stonehill defenders picking up big class taunts like Sunkeeper Terra Tyrion, you know, just the natural Sunkeeper Terra Tyrion in the deck. This deck can miss early starts, but as soon as it stabilizes, it can bring some value.
Look at this. Ant gonna evolve early on, and this was to protect himself versus a Consecration, but he does not get strong evolve off of that ability. That's some of the worst minions I think you can see at the 2 slot. There's a lot of them, but boy, he would have loved to see some 2/3s in there.
Yeah, now the average I think is, you know, right around 2/2, maybe slightly above in the attack and the health range because of the 3/2s and the 2/3s. So that's pretty poor.
This really sends you a signal of how poor Ant feels about his hand as well. I mean, he's got 2 Maelstrom Portals, he's got patches, he's got a Devolve. Devolve is meant to service as a tool against Finja, as a tool against Spikeridge Steed, landing on a strong minion. None of these cards are helping him right now, so him going for this turn exactly like this sends a big signal to JasonZhou. I think JasonZhou can really sense this as weakness.
Oh yeah. Devolve can also be used to sort of interrupt some of the tribal synergies. We talked about Murlocs, Pirates, and Pirate Warriors, so you can see why it's a great card against the Murloc Paladin, because they have the tribal, and they also have some of these minions with Spikeridge Steed, Tyrion, that you really want to get rid of that effect because it's powerful.
Yeah, Jason weighing his option between simply developing Murlocs or letting the Consecration rip, and frankly, I have to agree with him. If he plays his Murlocs on board, he's going to be threatened by Flametongue Totem, he's going to be threatened by Jade Lightning, even just a Maelstrom Portal could have gotten a lot of work done there, so I like him expending that very powerful tool.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about the Evolved Shaman is that the way players play the deck has also sort of evolved.
Yeah.
Using that evolve early as sort of a tempo tool, as a way to just make your board a little bit more powerful, has become an increasingly popular choice among high-tier competitive players. It's one of the reasons why, despite it being a big force in the meta, players are still having success with it, despite the list not changing. Players are countering it, but also players that play the deck are also finding new ways to try and increase the win rate of the deck.
Ooh.
Well,
suddenly that evolve is looking like it may have been expended early. I see where Ant is at with that evolve, and that style of aggressive play is what's gotten him so far in his career.
Yeah.
Again, think back to 2014, where he was playing decks that could get those blistering starts.
Yeah.
I got punished by playing decks that were just a little bit too slow against him, and very much so. He's done that his whole career. So when you see a play like that from Ant and it backfires here, it's a percentage play. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's fire.
One of the things that when we were talking to Ant about his you know, how he tends to go more towards the aggressive styles, is he doesn't think that he is tunneled onto aggressive play. He said that, you know, he's perfectly comfortable playing control decks. He just prefers aggressive decks because he thinks that usually they're better situated. So look back to DreamHack Austin last year in 2016.
Yeah.
He was playing a more control lineup, as were most people. So, and he got top 16 in that event. So, you know, there's a big difference between, you know, saying a player is an aggressive player or a player that just prefers aggressive decks because he thinks in tournament environments they're a little bit better most of the time.
Yeah. And I have to agree with him in most situations. You know, when you're playing against another strong player, how much of an edge can you really get in long games with lots and lots of decisions? You know, they're on par with you a lot of times in that decision making. The way to take advantage of that is the deck build from your opponent, or catching them off guard if they have a slow start.
As a very threatening board coming out from JasonZhou. He actually had 2 great options from the Stone Oak Protector.
Yeah. I like the Tyrion here because he's just got so much gas in hand for the next couple turns. Not really too much for him to think about on the minion front. I think he's got his plans straightforward. Second Doppelgangster. Ant is in for a rough rest of the game.
Yeah, that evolved while his hand at the beginning of the game spelled, well, I'm not going to get much of a great evolve turn this game. And then draws back-to-back Doppelgangsters. Well,
it's a strong devolve, but the problem is the follow-up to this devolve. It's there, but JasonZhou, he's got another Gentle Megasaur. He's got Spike Ridge Steed. He's got Blessing of Kings. And Tyrion is going to hit. It's a great turn this turn, but is this enough?
Stabilize for now. But the way this deck functions is it doesn't want to stabilize. It wants to sort of be the deck that's in control. Because the win condition of this deck is a Bloodlust on enough minions to kill your opponent.
Yeah.
It can reload with Doppelgangster Evolve. Sometimes Doppelgangster by itself is enough. But that type of reload doesn't work well if you've lost control of the board already.
Yeah.
Because then, especially a deck like Murloc Paladin that can just keep reloading, and if it just sticks 1 minion on the board, sometimes that 1 minion can become a threat. If it's a Murloc with Gentle Megasaur, if it's even just a Silverhand recruit with Spike Ridge Steed or Blessing of Kings, those types of things can snowball the game out of control.
The one thing that Ant has going for him is he doesn't have to fear Primordial Drake. It's not in JasonZhou's list, and the players know that. So when Ant is making these aggressive stances, I think a lot of it plays into the fact that he knows in the later stages of the game that Doppelgangster can still simply play a reload card in combination with Bloodlust. Since he doesn't have to fear Primordial Drake, that card becomes a lot more valuable in this matchup, I think, than it typically is. Most of the time, you're fearing Primordial Drake.
Redemption is the choice from the Hydrologist. Just going to allow him to keep a board, sort of at all costs. Also, if none of the minions are traded into this turn, then he's going to be able to drop Tyrion the following turn.
Yep.
And that's going to be tough to get through unless he picks up second Evolve. But even then, still got to deal with the 7-drop that comes out from Tyrion, which could be probably not as threatening, but close.
This is the one key turn here for Ant. He's got to get on board as wide as he can. He's got to hope he draws Bloodlust. Without Bloodlust, he's probably lost this game.
Oh, yeah.
Even with Bloodlust, it's still looking rough.
And he's got to test for some of these secrets. If he attacks with one of these 1-damage minions, realizes that it's not Noble Sacrifice, now he's got to think, well, hold on. Is it Getaway Kodo? If I, trade into one of these minions, am I just going to give him more value? If it's a Redemption, and I don't trade, and then he plays Tyrion next turn, even if I do draw Bloodlust, it's likely I won't win, because then I have to get through Divine Shield plus the 6 health, and then another Divine Shield plus the 1 health. It's a very tough situation.
He's suspecting Tyrion here. He's going to hope it's not there, but it is there. JasonZhou's got better minion presence. He's got his tricks laid out. Ant's out of Maelstrom portals.
1 Devolve left in the deck.
I said he'd Bloodlust, but Devolve actually may just be a better draw.
Yeah, Devolve will allow him to push a lot of damage. I mean, he's got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage.
Wow, look at this.
This is a deviation. This is just more health on the board that Ant has to get through. But
I'm a little bit surprised by this, but I think this actually is a stronger play, considering that this is 13 effective health right now, where with Tyrion, you're looking at perhaps less than that, with the 7 including the Divine Shield in the front half, and then 2 on the backside.
With Bloodlust, I don't know. I think it's still a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. That's a tough call.
Yeah.
I think one of the nods here is that maybe Spike Ridge Steed is tougher to use.
Definitely.
If Bloodlust comes out next turn and Ant is somehow able to get through Tyrion and clear the board, all of a sudden Spike Ridge Steed has much less value.
Look at these attacks from Ant. That is a lot of stuff to send to the grave.
Yeah, he hasn't, from what I can remember, has not played a single Jade card this game.
Not. That's
so
the first one.
I was just going to spawn a 1/1. He is in a heap of trouble. He's got some health to work with, but health is the resource that the Token Shaman usually has plenty of, and a lot of times they don't win the game by losing out on the health battle, they win the game by losing the board and eventually just getting attrition down to the game.
Yeah. And he's holding on to the second Doppelgangster because this may give him Evolve as a second form of fuel to get past this, but every single turn it's going to look tougher and tougher for him.
Yeah.
JasonZhou nowhere near out of gas.
This is a big match for Jason for multiple reasons. He's had a ton of success domestically and internationally with a top 4 at the World Championship last year. Also, every single Chinese player lost their first round match.
That's right.
Every single one. JasonZhou, these hometown fans really want to see one of the Chinese players succeed. They don't have a representative at the World Championship yet, and so far in this tournament, they have not delivered.
Yeah, and despite Jason's group and how tough it is for him, one of the big things to think about is the resume that he's got. You know, talking about his performances, he was, as you said, top 4 of the 2016 World Championships. He got first place at the Gold Series in summer in 2016. He got first place at the Gold Series in spring in 2017. He's moving earlier in the year. He wants you to know he means business sooner rather than later. He was a member of the winning team in the China versus NA 2017 event alongside EXO. He was first in the Hearthstone All-Star Invitational in 2016. This guy's been known for his Control Warrior play, thousands of games, where a big inspiration for that was Show. But he mentioned you have to be able to adapt to be a professional player.
And an adapt he has. You can see Control Warrior is missing from a lot of his lineups over the past, a year or so. He even switched up his strategy when he made it to the quarterfinals, or the round of 8, the World Championship last year on the main stage. Against Hamster, he knew he was going to bring a control lineup, so he brought an anti-control lineup. It was, really interesting to see him change up his strategy, even mid-tournament. That's how flexible this guy is.
You don't have to be too flexible with a Tyrion on board.
Nah. Tyrion's not very flexible either, but he doesn't really have to be.
Yeah, this is wise for JasonZhou to just continue to choke out the resources from Ant. The way that you lose is versus Evolve Shaman is letting them have too much to do. A big Evolve could still have changed the scope of this game, but every single turn, that hope is getting thinner and thinner.
Flame Tongue Totem helps, but it's not anywhere near close enough. And one thing about the Token Shaman is it just doesn't have resource generators. It's got Mana Tide Totem, and that's the only source of card draw on the deck. It generates resources by building up an early board and using that early board to kill you.
Yeah, maybe a Stonehill Defender.
Maybe a Stonehill Defender. That's true.
That's about it.
He's just won this game, so he can get a second one. But Stonehill Defender is not nearly as good in Shaman as it is in, say, Paladin. You still get cards like Alakir, Thing from Below. When you're this far behind on the board, none of those things seem that appealing.
Still a lot of weak draws up in Ant's deck as well. You look at the 2 Blood Cell Corsairs. There's a Firefly in the mix. There's still another Primal Thing. Bloodlust is looking like a miserable draw at this stage.
And when you are out of draws and you say to yourself, I really don't want to see Bloodlust, you probably lost.
He's fighting as hard as he can, but Jason has done a great job of minimizing this board from Ant.
Oh, yeah.
All that aggression, he may have been able to close the game by now, but this is effectively a close.
Yeah. He's going to be able to clean up the board here, develop the Finja if he so chooses, which, he may as well. And then Ant has no Doppelgangsters, 1 Evolve. He's got 1 draw turn. Stonehill Defender's probably the best draw on his deck, but even then, probably not enough. If he does get Alakir, he could push 6.
Well, he's got to have the mana to Alakir, too. Stonehill costs 3 to leave 7 floating.
If he can find a way to deal 2 damage, no. If he can find a way to deal 4 damage and then draw Runner, Stonehill Defender into Alakir, and Flametongue Totem.
And somehow not die during that.
And somehow not die with 18 health and an Ashbringer equipped for JasonZhou. And maybe he's got a chance.
Yeah.
But JasonZhou says, I'm not going to take a point of damage. What's the draw going to be? Thing from Below.
No dice.
No dice. Blessing and Kings on Finja. Run it over. Actually, probably not even. That'll kill off Finja. At this point, he's got a ton of ways to win.
Blessing Kings keeps it alive, actually. 7 power.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Crazed Alchemist. We were talking backstage, and Admiral showed me a list that he was cooking up with Crazed Alchemist and Control Paladin. I think Crazed Alchemist deserves at least 1 slot, maybe 2 slots in almost every Paladin deck. Kills Doomsayer, kills Totems, Flame Tongue, Mana Tide. Also, one thing that you mentioned, give it to him, man. For both.
Spike Ridge Steed on a Primordial Drake. Bam! That's 14 points of damage.
14 points of damage flipped around with a Crazed Alchemist. I heard and I was like, why haven't people been doing this already? It does have some weaknesses, but
Yeah, it's a Crazed Alchemist.
it's a Crazed Alchemist, but you know.
It's great versus aggro, dude. You flip that Bitter Tide right to an 8/8.
Bingo. Aldor Peacekeeper first, then flip it around. You got 1 health.
They did that a fair number of times as well. Yeah, this is a shutout here for Jason in game number 1, and looking at a 1-0 lead. So Ant's going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. Now, this was the one deck from JasonZhou that we all thought was going to perform fairly well versus Ant's lineup. I think this is by far his best chance to win, but the rest of these decks are very much susceptible to aggressive starts. And that was with a poor opening hand for Jason, too.
Yeah. Pretty poor opening hand for Ant as well. So it's, you know, those are the types of matches that I like, where both players have great draws, or where both players have, you know, pretty subpar draws.
Equal draws.
Equal draws.
Yeah.
Equal draws in any case are the matchups that I like to see. And you can definitely see that, you know, Ant maybe had a little bit less of a bad hand.
Well, that evolved early on. I mean, if he had saved that, would that have changed things?
Yeah, we talked about JasonZhou's pedigree, how he's been performing well domestically and internationally. And he's got one of the best resumes out of any Chinese player, you know, that I can recall. And we had a chance to sit down with Jason and talk to him about, is he the best player in China? So take a look.
Hearthstone is very popular in China. A lot of like young people, they like this game, and they want the Chinese player to win.
Please join me in welcoming from China, JasonZhou!
I went to BlizzCon last year, and I got the top 4, but I make some mistakes.
JasonZhou, China's last hope, looks like he's going down here.
This year I really want to go back and maybe to see if I can get the champion title. I told my friends, don't bet on me in this tournament. I will absolutely lose. I told them, but they still do it. There's nothing I can do. I play a very slow deck in this tournament, and those players I don't want to face is like play aggressive decks. And 3 of them are in my group, so I don't know, because I really don't want to face them. No, I don't think I can win this this time. But I know if I come out from the group stage, I feel confidence to win the champion title.
A little bit strange to not see the confidence coming out from JasonZhou. You know, he's a guy that has a little bit of a swagger about him, and he's a guy that likes to hold swords.
Same.
Yeah.
He's definitely a confident guy, but very real also in his approach. You know, not afraid to tell it like it is. And that's something you have to respect about a guy like JasonZhou. I mean, he told his friends, look, don't support me in this one. I don't have a great shot at winning this. But so far, he's up 1-0 over one of his absolute nightmare matchups in the lineups.
His whole group is sort of a nightmare matches, but we have a ton of fans here to watch some Hearthstone, and they're having a little bit of fun. I love the energy of some of these fans. And you can see here we have a little bit of an Ungoro set, lots of selfies going on, and we're selling some swag here at the event as well, some Blizzard swag. So it's definitely not just a spectator event, but it's a real just event as a whole, you know?
Yeah, and that's part of what I loved and what's kept me playing cards for so long is that community feel. Being able to show up at an event with individuals around me who share that same passion about the game. These guys have been loving the home advantage for the Chinese players as well. You can hear the roar of the crowd when they step out there, and it's such a wonderful thing to be a part of.
The biggest roar we heard was when X-Hope was playing and he got Vicious Fledgling, and he had lethal on board regardless, but he hit Wind Fury on a 10-attack Vicious Fledgling, and they just went nuts. And it was the coolest thing I've ever seen because it was like, you had lethal anyway, but who cares? We're gonna cheer, woo!
I cheered.
I cheered too.
I was backstage. I cheered at the Hungry Crab draw as well.
Yeah.
Right into that bile fin.
It's hard not to sort of go along with, you know, the hype and what these players get excited about, what these fans get excited about. So Looks like the players are about ready to get into the next match, so we'll jump into that one momentarily. But we talked about it. We talked about sort of the story of this matchup as a whole, and how JasonZhou, he's got that slow lineup he said he's not confident in. The Murloc Paladin, he was able to take a win with that, but that's just about the only deck that he has that probably has an even to maybe slightly favorable matchups against much of his lineup.
Yeah, the rest of him, if he's going to win, he will have to have some pretty lightning starts. And in that one, you can see on the big monitor from the crowd there.
New way to watch Hearthstone.
Innervate into Jade Blossom is a great start if you're in the Druid's position. JasonZhou needs to ramp up his mana. He needs to find something to defend himself. And then he's got to find a way to either draw cards or sweep out the pressure that Ant is going to apply. If he can't accomplish those goals, he will find himself in a tough spot.
And you can see he starts off with some ramp, and I can see from afar Innervate Primordial Drake in his hand, and a swipe picked up. So that's going to be some really good tools to start removing that early board.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned card draw as being an important facet. It's not 100% the case. A lot of times Jade Druids just have such a high draw density that if they're able to get to high mana counts with relatively safe boards, just the draw potential alone is enough for them to claw themselves out of a game. I mean, you're looking at Eye of Blackpaw, 2 Gadgets in Auctioneer, 2 Jade Behemoths, 2 Primordial Drake, and a Yogg Saron at JasonZhou's top end.
Sort of get a glimpse here. JasonZhou picks up the Feral Rage. Good card to stabilize, maybe start removing some of that early board. He's still got a little bit of ways to go before he can drop down that Primordial Drake, but once he does, it's going to be really tough for Ed to get through. He does have a copy of Devolve in his hand. Apologies. To try and get through it, maybe remove the taunt, but I mean, with a big drop like that, still got to deal with a 7-drop on the back of it.
It looks like he's got Evolve in hand as well, and just picked up Bloodlust to go with it. So
if he can start getting the board rolling, then he might be in a good spot. He's going to bring out the Manatide Totem to start things off, pick up some more resources. If he can pick up Doppelganger, so that'd be a great way.
Now that Manatide is a significant threat to JasonZhou. In this matchup, one of the ways that he could fall behind in this matchup is Manatide just cranking out extra resources turn after turn and leading to positions where Ant has all the combos he needs to keep pressure on JasonZhou. So wise of him, I think, to use Feral Rage as simply a removal tool here, not worry about extending his life. Just make sure that Ant has the toughest time as possible putting together those combos.
We need to zoom and enhance.
Just look at how fast this is.
Yeah. I can't even see the players. Look at them.
I just want to ride around
On the jet. Just hop on. Hop on the camera.
cowboy hat. You're like, woo! That's Primordial Drake.
And that's a nearly clear board. That's going to be really tough for Ant to get through.
Jade Lightning, not the worst pickup here, but JasonZhou's starting to get over that hump. He's got some powerful tools left in hand. And remember, Ant is the one who's got to apply the aggression. As time goes on, JasonZhou's in a better and better position. How do you apply pressure when your board's been ripped apart this way?
Yeah, really testing our card recognition skills. Big hunk of green, probably Jade Lightning.
Have you ever minimized the window as small as you can and tried to play, like in windowed mode?
No.
I have. It's very difficult.
That's going to do now.
He's taking a risk here. He's loading up the board right now in anticipation of landing what looks like a devolve and an evolve in the same turn. And that's a really interesting play here because it leaves him at risk of second Primordial Drake or like double swipe, something in that vein. But the other thing it does too is it plays right into JasonZhou's single removal in this situation. He's going to lose all of his doppelgangsters because he chose to do this.
I think he realized that if he waits one more turn, I mean, look at his hand, it's a lot of situational stuff. He's got Devolve, Jade Lightning, Bloodlust, Evolve. If he waits one more turn, it's likely that JasonZhou just develops, and then there's really no hope for Ant to even have a semblance of hope of coming back.
Yeah.
It's tough, but it's hard to say if that's the correct play or not. He's able to get through the Primordial Drake, but at what cost?
Frankly though, I have to agree with what you're saying. I mean, if he allows JasonZhou to just have a free turn to get stuff on board, when does the Doppelgangster Evolve actually pull it back in, because JasonZhou is so far ahead on board at that point, he can just whittle down the minions as he pleases. And in this situation, had Ant drawn a second Doppelgangster or drawn Stonehill Defender, he actually might have gotten a board going.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, look at the top left of your screen. That's me.
That's you.
Hey, guys. Ant's Jades are getting pretty big, though.
That's true, but he's going for the Evolve right here.
That's a Doomsayer!
And he's going to be left with 2 Devolves, a Bloodlust, and a Maelstrom Portal. And look at JasonZhou. Take a swig of the water, take a step back. He knows he's in great shape after that Evolve.
Yeah, now, one thing that we do have to note about this is Jason needs to forego development this turn, and he doesn't really have anything to play outside of it. He can try and draw a card with the Wrath. I mean, is there any situation where he just jams his Aya here and tries to, you know, get the death rattle off to effectively ramp his Jades?
It's not unreasonable even to do that, because you end up with a minion on board, and he's got plenty more Jade stuff in the deck. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he has to do anything,
No,
but it's not unreasonable to play Aya.
Yeah, he's also got Yogg-Saron, which is basically just a backup plan if things go awry. At this point, it doesn't look like they will, and is starting to run low on resources. JasonZhou can probably smell blood in the water at the fact that Ant's got a lot of situational cards. He's been playing off the top. He's been playing, you know, a little bit off.
It's been floundering.
He has, yeah. Triumphant Totem is a very weak reload, and that's a totem up. I believe that's a thing from below, so that's pretty good.
And he's got a Maelstrom Portal just for the pressure, and this is really smart from Ant. He's got Bloodlust in hand. If he draws another Bloodlust, I mean, that's a ton of damage if he's able to pull that off. I mean, is this a spot where JasonZhou looks at this and goes, man, he could easily have 2 Bloodlusts in hand. He didn't use Devolve on the Primordial Drake.
Yeah.
He hasn't had really a chance to use those cards. It could very easily be 2 Bloodlust in Ant's hand right now, so JasonZhou's got to figure something out.
Yeah, he does have Yogg-Saron, but he's lacking Rule right now. He's got Feral Rage and a Jade Spirit far left, so we can play the Jade Spirit and then go with the Feral Rage, but actually he's just going to go ahead and draw.
He's gonna Feral Rage for armor on this turn to attempt to protect himself with the intention of moving into Yogg-Saron, it looks like.
Wow. It's crazy that this game has come down to JasonZhou maybe having to go for a Yogg-Saron.
It looks like another thing from below. But Bloodlust is 15 damage right here. I don't know if Ant can pass that up.
15 points of damage plus 7, 8. So 23 points of damage on the board. And Enchanted Raven on the far right, a thing from below on the far left.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, you know, it's one of the mistakes that you see the most with Bloodlust is players not seizing the opportunity when they can.
Well, I know that sound anywhere.
Yeah.
That's a Bloodlust.
It's a lot of damage, and that's a thing from below. I can't hear what totem that was, but I guess it's spell power.
Sounded like healing to me.
Oh,
That's Yogg-Saron.
my.
All right, try and cast with this just sound only.
Fork lightning, maybe?
Potion
That was a Starfire.
or a Moonfire.
Crowd's cheering. It's something.
Remember that time in China where we had to cast a Yogg-Saron with holy sound? I do.
Welcome to Radio Stone.
Time waits for no one. I concede.
Well, that's a concede.
Wow. No, we apologize for the technical difficulty up here. We had our feed frozen, but that had to have gone awry, if that's a concession at the end of it.
Arrive for somebody.
Yeah, but that was Malfurion conceding, not Thrall. So Ant ties up the series, 1 game apiece, 15-point Bloodlust towards the end. I mean, that game looked like it was slipping away.
Yeah, the crowd was going nuts at the Yogg-Saron, so, man. We heard a couple spells, but it looks like they weren't enough. And it's kind of crazy to think about Ant's opening hand, the Primordial Drake coming down with the Innervate, and he was still able to find a way to reload the board and piece together enough damage with Bloodlust.
And that's with that Doppelgangster he played. Honestly, that Doppelgangster played a big role of disruption by forcing JasonZhou to pay attention to the board. Him having to pay attention to the board made him forego development. It gave Ant another chance to get on board, and eventually it led to that Bloodlust turn, even despite the Doomsayer from his own Evolve.
Yeah, and Ant now taking a win, tying up the series 1-1, and has won the hearts of a lot of fans. And we had a chance to sit down with Ant, get his thoughts on the tournament coming up. So take a look.
I stream 6 days a week.
Hey, hello there. Welcome back to my stream.
Streaming's probably the thing that I think keeps me happy the most. Yeah, I mean, I make money from it, but it's not really like the main reason why I do it. I've kind of, built up the followers and have this community, and people, just want to experience Hearthstone with me. They love when I do the card imitations. Who dares summon me? I think someone on my Twitter requested Stormpike Commando. I got a huge gun. I've got a huge gun. Flame Imp. I'll get right on it.
Yeah, I'll get right on it.
Oh, Manic Soulcaster. It only costs my soul.
It only cost my soul.
This is a little bit weird, but I mean, I still love doing this. Leroy Jenkins. The end is coming. The end is coming. Tide rises.
Tide rises.
I used to be scarred by like SI Agent.
This guy's toast.
Because I used to only play Zoo in 2014. So anytime I heard, this guy's toast, it's like, oh no. We're gonna be rich.
We're gonna be rich.
I want to be rich. Job's done.
Ant has just booked his ticket to Shanghai, China.
Look at that relief on his face, the excitement on his face.
Yeah, I can absolutely feel the support from my community here in China. My goal here is to win. Like, why else am I here?
I know someone else who's good at impressions.
Ant.
That's exactly where I was going. And you can see some of his accolades here. And we talked about it earlier. Sort of all three of ours first foray into competitive Hearthstone at a top level. Me casting, you and Ant on the stage playing. It was all together. And now, again, we've come full circle back here. And Ant has tied up the series 1-1 after what looked like a pretty poor start for him in the Shaman versus Druid game. And I gotta feel like JasonZhou is probably feeling the pressure after that one.
Especially with the way the game panned out. He landed an early Primordial Drake. He saw a Doomsayer from Ant's own cards where he doesn't want to blow up his own board. He still didn't get out of that game. Ant just never used two of the cards in his hand. In an aggro deck.
In an aggro deck.
That doesn't happen very often.
I can tell you one thing, though, Nathan. I've never been happier to see Hearthstone cards up close and personal.
Whew. Look great, don't they?
Oh boy, do they.
Now, that one looks pretty great.
Yeah, now Ant is bringing Secret Mage. Now, Secret Mage was a deck that terrorized the ladder, but was a deck that definitely had a lack of success in big tournaments. In all of the playoffs that we saw earlier in the year, Secret Mage had below a 50% win rate, while the Discover Mage, the Gunther Mage, the Burn Mage, whatever you want to call it, was towering on like a 56% win rate.
Yeah, and something really interesting to note about it is when we talked with the players leading up to the start of this event, a lot of people question Ant's Secret Mage build. They said, why would he bring this? The other ones have better win rates, they function better, they target the lineups a little bit harder. But this is part of Ant's style. He wants to be an aggressive player, and he wants to be putting you to the test turn after turn. That's exactly what this deck does. The copy of Pyros in here to make sure that he's got drops throughout the game. He's got 2 copies of Counterspell, 1 Mirror Entity, and 1 Spellbender. Those are his secrets. Outside of that, it's a package of aggressive minions and burn spells. The typical things you see from Mage with Medivh's Valet, Frostbolt, and Fireball. Those 2 Cabal Crystal Runners trying to accelerate to that point via these secrets, and if things go awry, his own Yogs are on.
Oh yeah. This is basically a mirrored version of a deck that Ant loves to play on ladder. He's had a couple of top 50 finishes over the past couple of months. Not primarily playing this deck because he plays a ton of different decks getting there, but it is one of the decks that he plays a lot. I personally have played against him a few times on ladder, and it just feels like he applies more pressure than normal players when he plays this deck. It's kind of crazy to think about. And when you talk with, you know, high-level competitive players, it's hard for them to see the cards of their opponent, but what they can tell is, am I under pressure the whole game when I'm playing against an opponent playing an aggressive deck? If the answer is yes, they're doing something right. And I think that Ant is definitely doing something right here. He starts off with Ice Block, and what this does basically is allow him to guarantee the Medivh's Valet next turn. You look at it and say, well, why doesn't he play the counter spell? Because, you know, he can try and disrupt early on. Ice Block has got plenty of time. Well, if JasonZhou procs the counterspell next turn, then his plays are pretty limited. He can't get that Medivh's Valet out in a guaranteed, so yeah, like that start.
The other thing, too, is it starts the guessing game for JasonZhou. He saw it wasn't counterspell. That's where you start getting worried. Why else would Ant play it? He's not going to play Vaporize. You know, he's not going to play Ice Barrier. This is right now looking like Ice Block or Mirror Entity if you're in JasonZhou's spot. Possibility that it's Potion of Polymorph.
Could be Spellbender.
Could be.
Spellbender is a card that I feel like is better on ladder because your opponent doesn't expect it. It's not as powerful when your opponent knows what's going on.
Well, this was a really interesting spot here for Ant. Seeing JasonZhou attack the Medivh's Valet with his face in this spot, he's really telegraphing Primordial Drake. If JasonZhou has Primordial Drake, he'd have to coin it out to play it on the following turn. Ant immediately used Arcane Intellect. I think this is an opportunity to maybe use Counterspell as a disruption effect, force him off of Primordial Drake for a turn, and chip away for that little bit of extra damage. Now, that may not be his main concern, but there is a consequence to not reading closely into this. Suddenly, Primordial Drake looks like a very realistic possibility.
Yeah, and did understand that read, and he, instead of going with Sorcerer's Apprentice, which would have filled up his curve, put more power on the board, he goes with Mana Worm to make sure somebody's going to survive the damage from the Primordial Drake. So definitely like that heads-up play from him.
What does this cost him?
Yeah, I mean, Primordial Drake's going to be really tough to get through. He's going to be able to get through it with Fireball, plus, of course, the 2 damage attack from the Mana Worm, but he's not really developing anything unless he goes for Sorcerer's Apprentice. Just a 3-2 on the board. I guess Babbling Brook also. Just a 3-2 on the board doesn't really spell much. Oh.
That's a big pickup for Ant right now. And anything to hard clear boards against big stuff, I think it's a very valuable resource. And Ant is not thinking about second Primordial Drake here. He knows it'd be bad, but there's not really much way for him to play around it at this point. So it hitting and him having Meteor, he doesn't look quite as nervous as I think he normally would if he'd seen it. And now Yogg-Saron joins the party. So I think Ant is starting to see where his plan is going. It's looking like the value from Pyros and the value from Yogg-Saron are going to be his main routes to victory.
And those are some pretty powerful routes. Pyros is not included in a lot of Secret Mage decks, but the value that it generates is incredible. A 10-10, well, a 6-6 and then a 10-10 against a deck like Jade Druid, which lacks hard removal, can get a lot of work done, especially coupled with Bird Mage. Pop that 10-10 on the board, protect it with some of your spells.
Right. It's very rare that JasonZhou's going to have the liberty of simply applying counter pressure in that situation, because Ant is the one with the burn spells in deck. So every single time he leaves a minion around, it threatens to deliver a massive amount of damage and then have Ant follow up with a big finish. So he's got to pay attention to that turn after turn. And as we lead later and later in this game, that Yogg-Saron's going to look scarier and scarier. Meteor's doing some nice work here, and he's got a 10-10 to back himself up on this. He's got plenty of time.
Arcanologist, Spellbender is the only secret left in the deck. Mirror Entity. Yeah. I'm sorry. Mirror Entity and Spellbender, the only secrets left in the deck.
You see JasonZhou shifting around in his chair after seeing that Meteor. But this Auctioneer is a lot of value he's picking up, and he needs it.
Yeah, it's... I don't know how likely it is. With 17 cards left, he's got 3 1-mana spells left. He's got 2 Earthen Scales and a single copy of Jade Idol. So, you know, 3 out of...
Does he have another Innervate?
16. And he does have another Innervate, so he could pick up Innervate as well. He's going to draw 4 cards from this Nourish.
Fairly high % chance to find himself something to do.
Oh,
back to
Scales.
Anything else just to continue digging to key cards?
Well, he's going to think about it. Because Earthen Scales on a Gadgetzan Auctioneer is not the highest amount of armor gain. He's used a Feral Rage already, and it wasn't a full value Feral Rage since he had to attack into a 6 damage minion.
That's right.
So he's worried about the health gain, I feel. He's got a second Gadgetzan Auctioneer in hand. So that's got to be it, because most of the removal spells get through that Gadgetzan Auctioneer anyway. Firelance Portal being, you know, a major one. would still get through a 5-attack Gadgetzan Auctioneer. So he says, I want the additional health gain later in the game, so I'm going to forego going for it right now.
And honestly, it looks like it's a fairly brilliant choice for Jason to do that as well, because the way this game is panning out, he looked at Fireland's Portal and said, you know what, if I run into that right now and I use this Earthen Scales, that armor isn't going to buy me any amount of tempo. Like when he's under this style of pressure, you know, maybe Jade Behemoth is enough to fend off the board state for a while, but then he doesn't have the Earthen Scales. Sure, he's one card not as deep into his deck, but he needs that for that big swing. Like when he's threatening Ant and he needs to buy back the life total. He's trying to create that situation, and that's just a tall order, but it requires him to have a card like that. Very interesting.
Golems are a girl's best friend.
Jade's at 3-3. So already, once this Aya dies, the Jades will already be at the power level of the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. So he's already getting to the point where he's going to get more value. Primordial Glyph. That is a scary card. But I think little 10-10.
10-10's pretty scary
Little 10-10.
as well. It's not a little one.
Big 10-10.
Yeah, it's a big one. The other thing, too, though, is that Ant has just got so many ways to fight this front. You know, build to the Yogg-Saron, try to disrupt with Mirror Entity and Counterspell, dig into burn spells, try to find something big from the Glyph, play a 10-10. I mean, how often do you have this many lines of play with an aggressive style of deck this deep into the game? Like, contrast this with game 1 and 2 from Ant.
Yeah, it's tough. If he goes with a 10-10 here, there's almost enough power on the board to contest it as is. But what it does do is it sort of, you know, diversifies his threats. He can play this, and then, you know,
Look at Jason, too.
He knew that Pyros was there. Wrap?
Well, he can't handle it.
He can.
And that's the end of Pyros. Pyros doesn't come back as a 20-mana 20/20, so.
If only it started over. Just gave the 2/2 back. It'd be absolutely insane. And you can Wrath for 1 here because the swipe on the Pyros plus the attack from the Aya is enough to clear off the whole board. Now, beyond that, he doesn't develop much. Actually, he doesn't develop anything besides the Jade that he gets from Aya. Is there any other line of play that he can go with? I don't think so. With that Wrath for 1, he essentially has to remove it, so he's got to go for Wild Growth.
The alternative would have been the Earthen Scales plus swipe, but that only leaves him 5 mana. So
yeah,
not too much reason to do that, but Jade Idol, certainly a reason to do something.
Yeah, now Jade Idol, it is his second Jade Idol, which means he won't have that infinite Jade Idols if he goes for it now, but this is often a matchup where you don't win by getting infinite Jades. You win by just surviving the onslaught of damage that the Secret Mage can put out.
Well, we do say that, but JasonZhou looks like he's cooking up a plan here. And
yeah,
this has gone, I think, a lot longer with Ant having a lot of gas than he anticipated, and he may be looking towards that. You know, the other thing to consider is he knows that Ant has got his own copy of Yogg-Saron. Let's say the Yogg-Sarons on each side break even. The way for JasonZhou to win in that situation would be an infinite Jade Idol cycle.
Secret Mage, it's not an aggressive deck in the traditional sense. It doesn't run out of resources that quickly, or if it does run out of resources, the cards that it can pick up can provide it gas.
Oh my, that's a big boy.
It's a big boy, but it also has a little bit of a downside if you're playing a deck that wants to kill your opponent quickly. But if that swings twice, it already makes up for the heal that it gets when it dies.
And the big thing to me right now is that they're still in the value battle. If that's the case, a 6/6 is a much bigger deal right now, I think, than the life total for JasonZhou. And that all, you know, funnels back to that Earthen Scales he forewent. Both players are understanding that right now.
All right, there's going to be a big turn for Ant. He's got plenty of resource generation with Arcane Intellect and Primordial Glyph. Picks up Kirin Mage. That's a huge tempo tool.
Well, we're going to
start over.
Yeah, see a do-over here. He had a Mana Worm. That might have been lethal.
Fireball.
Wow.
Arcane Intellect, also good.
Ant, however, does need to consider the size of his deck. You know, this Yogg-Saron is very quickly getting absurd in terms of the number of spells it will use.
Yeah, I think Fireball is slated for the 5/5 here, and then he can play Kirin Mage plus the Mirror Entity. He has a Mirror Entity, a Counterspell up, a 6/3, a 2/2, and a 4/3.
Wise to draw here first as well.
Yeah, he can fit in the draw. It's the perfect amount of mana to do so.
Yeah. He's told JasonZhou he has that Fireball in hand, but his play is the same almost anyway. You slice this and a Cabal Crystal Runner. So now JasonZhou is looking like he's going to have to play Yogg-Saron because this was way too big of a swing for him to legitimately handle.
Yogg-Saron, the Mirror Entity, will trigger once Yogg-Saron has completed, if I'm correct. I haven't seen that interaction in a long time, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So that's what he's got to be worried about as well. You don't want to go for Hero Power Innervate Yogg-Saron to get that additional spell because it's very likely Counterspell. It could be Spellbender, Mirror Entity, Ice Block, but
he knows.
This Yogg-Saron's got to be big, and JasonZhou putting his hopes on Hope's End.
Safeguard the land.
Wow.
I don't think that's enough.
And it copies it with the buffs.
Copies it with the buffs.
JasonZhou is dead.
He's not dead yet.
Oh, he's got the secret. It's a cat trick.
It's a cat trick.
Ant doesn't know that, though. So
it's a hunter secret, so if it's explosive trap, then he could be in trouble with his minions. He could trade in the 2/2 and the 4/2 to get there.
Wow.
So if he trades in 2/2, 4/2, he's got 16 plus the 5. That's 21. Frostbolt, 24. Ping, 25. He's not there yet. And it's not. I don't think it's time to counter with the Yogg-Saron. If Ant doesn't close the game out pretty soon and can't find the burn,
well,
then he might be relying on his own Yogg-Saron.
He's got an idea of what this secret is, but we're going to find out how he wants to take this on. As soon as he attacks face, now the jig is basically up. He knows that it's cat trick.
Snipe.
Yeah, it's got to be one of those two. And either one of those I think is fine for Ant right now. And that's 16 damage crashing in. A little bit curious about that Frostbolt.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Maybe he had to read that it was Snipe.
Well, he saw it wasn't Snipe when he played the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Oh yeah, he did. So
yeah.
He knew it was cat trick. Oh, he has some armor gain.
Yeah, I mean,
there's still counterspell up though. It's one thing, but he has Innervate as counterspell fodder. So what he could do is Innervate, Jade Spirit, and then Earth and Scales on the biggest Jade.
That's a lot of gas.
So right now his Jades are at 6/6, so it would be a 7/7, so he would get 8 armor, then 9 armor.
He's taking 24 on the backswing though.
He's gaining 7. Man, yeah, yikes.
Does have a taunt in the way.
Does have a taunt in the way. That blocks 6.
There's the counter spell. Wise of Jason do that.
He can heal. He can heal the 8 by attacking in to the corrupted heal bot. He goes up to 15. If he Earth and Scales, he gains 7 plus 8, so that's 15.
I mean, does he need to kill the Yogg-Saron with the Earth and Scales though?
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah.
You're right.
So he gains even less life. I mean,
I'm not used to Yogg-Saron having taunt on a mage side of the board.
It's got, I think this buys him more value overall in terms of, he gets some life 8 power off the board. But this is a lot that Jason's investing to take care of this. So we're not anywhere close to completely done yet, but that's not a very good one right now. I think JasonZhou actually might have recovered. The anti-heal bot suddenly is looking like a liability.
Jason is effectively out of life gain, is one thing.
Yeah, both Earth and Scales, both Feral Rages have been used.
Have both Feral Rages been used?
Yeah. He used one to clear early on, I believe.
And then he used one just... No, I think he's only used one, but...
No, he used it early with the Fandral.
Okay.
Yeah, a combination with Fandral. Unless I'm just hideously recalling the previous game. And Ant going to take this opportunity to buy himself one more shot with this anti-heal bot before the life comes back. Wow.
Yogg-Saron has a ton of fodder. JasonZhou's was only about a 9th speller. This one's getting close to 15. I mean, he's only got 8 cards in his deck, so that means he's used the double Primordial Glyph, Fireballs, Frostbolt, 5 secrets, 6 secrets.
The extra Primordial Glyph.
Just a ton of spells used for Ant.
Babbling Books.
Oh, man. This is giving me flashbacks to last year, 2016, around the summer, when Yogg-Saron pre-change was dominating the meta.
JasonZhou throws away his other Jade Idol.
I mean, at this point, I don't think it matters. Ant's got one card left in his hand. It's been in his hand since the beginning of the game. JasonZhou's got to have a read on what it is. He's got to build up as big of a board as he can. Hope that this 17 health that he has is going to get him through. Well, not 17 anymore. It's now 12. Spellbender.
Well,
I think it's only time for one thing. Yoxeron, JasonZhou gives a smile and sits back in his chair. Let's see how this one plays out. Oh, man.
Round 2, and he stole the Jade Spirit as well.
I don't think that matters, but no, Yoxeron spell, they don't stack, so it's going to be reset to the same amount, but I think that gives him a lot of hope. And Jade Golems that are banished actually are pretty tough to play because you have to play them for their full mana cost for what size they are.
Well, a little bit easier to play alongside those, but I think JasonZhou's got some more Jade Spirits in mind. The thing to think of, though, is that JasonZhou can tick in fatigue. If that Yoxeron can keep doing enough work...
He doesn't have Jade Idols left. That was his second Jade Idol.
That was what I was talking about earlier, was that second Jade Idol usage. He's going to have Ant under pressure for pretty much the rest of the time. Yoxeron needs to deliver if you're Ant.
No secrets left in the deck, I do believe. Yeah, no secrets left.
Here we go, round 2.
Here we go.
Oh my.
Base damage. Fireball!
Oh my.
And he's got Blood Bloom!
My.
Is that lethal? think that's game. Unless his board cleared off and he's attacking with those hounds, that is game.
Wow, what a finish. Ant gonna take a grueling battle in game 3 and now a 2-1 lead over JasonZhou.
Wow. Even the crowd against their hometown JasonZhou can't help but cheer for that Yoxeron. A second try at glory for Yoxeron, Hope's End. And he's able to get it done. That was crazy. The Blood Bloom, Mimipod into Fireball. He had plenty of damage too. I mean, he had like 6 damage over lethal, or not 4 damage over lethal with the hounds. That was insane.
I've got nerd chills, TJ.
Nerd chill. Me too, man.
I got the goosebumples.
Me too. Whew. Ooh, man. But that was looking bad for Ant there for a while. There was that moment in the game where he picked up the Cabal Crystal Runner, built up a huge board, and was looking like he was going to swing it, but JasonZhou had double Earth and Scales. Turns out wasn't enough.
It's really tough to come back from the kinds of tempo swings that can put together. But all of that, honestly, was a catalyst from that Pyros. It being a 2-2 and then a 6-6 and then a 10-10 really kept JasonZhou under pressure to respond to it every single step of the way.
Yeah. And coming up after this match, we have a couple players getting ready. We're going to go over to the winners matches after this one. Muzzy versus Citizen Napa is going to be up first. And there it is. Citizen Napa, that is frightening. Okay, there we go. There we go. Not so stoic anymore. How long can they wave? Who knows? 15 seconds? 20 seconds? We cut away just in time.
Legend has it they're still waving.
Legend has it they're still waving backstage. But yeah, that'll be coming up next. We're going to get into the winners matches in the second portion of today, which means at the end of this day, day 1, we'll have 4 players moving on to the quarterfinals. Well, they'll have a little bit of a rest, and then they'll be able to fight at the end of the day tomorrow for that spot at the World Championship. And of course, we got to, give a shout out to the merchandise for selling a lot of merchandise here for the fans. I know I'm going to be over there towards the end of the day once I get off, trying to pick up some swag.
I'm going to take a peruse over there myself. I saw some blades. I could buy those big replica.
Oh, the one like Jason was holding.
Yeah.
For like 10 seconds in the intro, yeah.
Legend has it that's his sword that they're selling.
Legend has it he's still holding onto that sword.
He's going to need something for this one because he is in for a tough time. Now, one of the things to talk about with JasonZhou's Druid build is that he does have a copy of Gluttonous Ooze in there.
And he's got it in hand.
And it can be a very valuable tool versus Ant. But the big hump for him to really get over isn't the weapons that Ant is going to be using, it's stuff like Frothing Berserker and Kor'kron Elite. You know, the early start with the weapon is definitely a big deal, but it's those giant minions that can pose those big threats early on. And Frothing Berserker, one of the scariest ones for JasonZhou. Without Feral Rage or Swipe, it often will hit 1 or 2 times, and Ant picks up patches right away.
That is the second game so far this series out of 3 games that he's played with aggressive decks that he's drawn the patches. So really rough for him. That is now 4 patches that we've seen drawn in the opening hand this tournament, and that's just the ones that I can recall. There could have been, you know, other ones if I was walking backstage or something, but, you know, one thing is some players still have sort of a misconception about the...
Hang on. Okay. He's not going for the Fire Warrior X.
Well, as I was saying, some players still have the misconception of the Jade Druid versus Pirate Warrior matchup. It's very close to 50-50. All statistics will tell you is very close to 50-50 matchup. Despite Jade Druid traditionally being weak against aggressive decks. One of the reasons why is because Pirate Warrior tends to run out of resources quickly, and as long as you can stabilize in 1 turn with armor gain or taunts, you're fine as a Jade Druid. I'd still say it's slightly Pirate Warrior favored, but especially with this opening hand from Jason and this opening hand from Ant with patches drawn, JasonZhou looks like he's going to be home free.
It's not even that the patches didn't come out of the cannon, so the patches taking a spot in the hand. You know, that's really the big one to look at here. And Ant, though, he was wise enough to play the Frothing Berserker first. He knows if that goes unchecked, that's a route to victory. And it looks like his focus is going to be on maintaining that Frothing Berserker as long as possible. That means keeping the South Sea deckhand alive to continue to chip away. It means threatening to have that as trade damage. Even if Gluttonous Ooze hits here, how strong against him is it? He's still got Heroic Strike in hand to handle that and continue to push that Frothing Berserker.
That's true. If he Gluttonous Oozes here, he gains 3 health, but then it has to attack in to the South Sea deckhand, which, you know, minuses him 1 health. So at the end of the day, he's looking at a ton of damage from Frothing Berserker, and not the most powerful board on his side. So
the thing too is, imagine he Gluttonous Oozes and then Arcanite Reaper hits later on.
Yeah, it's tough.
You're gonna wish you had it back.
Maybe he just goes for Aya here, but if he goes for Aya, Ant's got a pretty easy way to remove at least some of that, and then he can push more damage with the Frothing Berserker. He's only at 21.
This Frothing Berserker is getting scary, Teej. There is no way for JasonZhou to even touch it right now.
He's going for Earthen Scales now.
And the Earthen Scales plays right into the Heroic Strike from Ant.
This is bizarre considering he's got 2 6-drops in his hand that are more powerful than the Gluttonous Ooze. He's doing this because he wants to try and contest the Frothing Berserker. That's the only reason why he's doing this. It's not the most efficient health gain, but he realizes I don't have a single removal spell in my hand for this Frothing Berserker. If I don't get this bad boy up to 4 attack, it's just going to run right over me, and I'll be able to continue pushing damage.
See his reaction to Heroic Strike. Kor'kron Elite would have done it, and the copy of Mortal Strike would have done it as well.
And upgrade slated because of the Captain's Greenskin in hand.
Yep.
Not too telegraphed.
Well, JasonZhou will be able to stop this pressure in the next turn or so, but is it too much already? He's taking another shot no matter how you slice this.
He needs Armor Gain, he needs Primordial Drake, he needs Jade Behemoth. Yeah, he can contest the board, but considering there's 9 damage staring at him right now with the Captain Greenskin,
oh mama,
he's already got 11. More charge damage. JasonZhou is going to need some help off the top, and I think Ant at this point has to say, I got to turn the corner. Board doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I think the Greenskin is the last point of mattering, simply because the lack of JasonZhou being able to contest 2 4-power minions, or 2 4-health minions at once. That factor plus the additional chip damage from the weapon, I think, gives him a better spot to actually use the Kor'kron Elite afterwards. And it can also slate his mana just a little bit better. Say Primordial Drake isn't there. Maybe Dread Corsair can run linebacker for one of these minions in the meantime and still have that chip damage going away. I think Greenskin all day, every day.
Yeah, next turn he goes into 6 mana with Dread Corsair at 2, Kor'kron Elite at 4. Fills up his mana curve well. Still needs to find some damage, though.
Innervate.
That's not bad. That's pretty good, actually. If he can find a spell to use with this Innervate.
That's not the one you want.
But I mean, it's something.
That's not the one you want. Frothing Berserker.
He cannot clear off this Captain Greenskin without taking even more damage. If he swings into the Captain Greenskin, he's going to take 4, or he's going to take 5.
1 damage off lethal?
1 damage off lethal.
Upgrade will finish it. Heroic Strike will finish it.
South Sea Deckhand will finish it.
Mortal Strike will threaten to finish it.
Fire War Axe That'll finish
Fiery
it.
War Axe will finish it, and Ant is going to take the series 3-1 over JasonZhou. What a set between these two, TJ. This was fire.
I'm kind of stunned right now. That series was much closer than, I thought it was going to be. JasonZhou, he had a significant lineup disadvantage, but he was able to make those games pretty close. I mean, that last one may not have been close unless a Taunt Minion or an Armor Game was the next card in JasonZhou's deck, but boy, Yogg-Saron in game number 3, such an intense and incredible series.
The thing to look at is the amount of pressure that JasonZhou was able to fight back with and how tough it was for Ant to win these games. Not necessarily that Ant won 3 games to 1, but how much work he had to do to move on just 1 round in this bracket.
Yeah, and you can see Ant's going to move on to face RDU later today in the winner's match from Group D. RDU, a player with an aggressive lineup as well that's just slightly more aggressive than Ant, so it's going to be tough for him. But big story here, as we're in Shanghai, all 4 Chinese players fall down to the lower bracket. So that's going to be a trend that we're going to have to follow as today goes on. But in the meantime, let's head over to Ali on stage with some words with our winner.
All right, let's hear this for Ant， 再次给我们的 Ant 热烈掌声，好不好？比赛非常精彩哈。当然，我们的本土选手 JasonZhou 表现得也很棒。我相信现在大家都特别关心啊，尤其是第3场比赛尤格萨隆之战，他有什么感触呢 ？So we need to talk about Game 3. Everyone is like crazy about it. So how do you feel about that?
I feel like I could play it a little bit better, but I mean, it was pretty exciting. It was really exciting. I like the Yogg on Yogg action. It's great.
Yes.
Oh, who doesn't love a good Yogg-Saron, right?
Yeah, it's for sure. 哎，我们的 Ant 说呢，他特别的激动啊，他也特别兴奋，能赢得，尤其是第3局的比赛，大家都特别喜欢尤格萨隆对阵尤格萨隆的比赛啊，这完全是一个特别棒的电子竞技游戏哈，全靠技术，全靠技术哈。Okay, so before, I mean, when you know that the JasonZhou's lines up actually is a little bit, you have this lines up actually has an advantage over his line. Yeah. So how do you feel when you know that?
It feels great, and then like you think about it, I'm like, man, I really don't want to lose. I don't want to lose, especially on stage. You're like, I don't want to lose. I really don't want to lose, especially when you're favored. You just really don't want to lose that matchup when you're super favored.
Very good. 那我刚问的 Ant 的第2个问题呢，是他的卡组啊，这次比赛参加的卡组相对来说的话，比 JasonZhou 的要有很大的优势，毕竟是快攻卡组嘛。我问他有什么感受，他说真的特别开心啊，能获得比赛的话，他也是特别开心的 Big Boy。好，我们再次感谢我们的 Ant 好吗？掌声感谢，来，也感谢我们的 JasonZhou。Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ant is such a lovable guy.
He really is. He's just got a bright sense of soul around him. Everything he says is from the heart, and you can tell he's feeling a little bit of nerves up there on that stage. I mean, this is a guy that anytime you speak to him, he's as friendly as can be, never has that sense about him. But in this one, tell you what, GG, Ant loves Hearthstone.
Yeah, if you want to get to know Ant a little bit better, we posted a little bit of a piece on him. We actually went to his home and got to see a little bit about his childhood and his life outside of Hearthstone. So you can check it out on the Play Hearthstone Twitter. Because he's definitely a lovable guy. But that's going to do it for that series. We have plenty more Hearthstone action coming today. Momentarily, we're going to move on to the winners bracket matches, where we're going to see 4 players advance to the quarterfinals, where they'll be 1 match away from the coveted spot at the World Championship. Don't go anywhere, guys. More